Welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. I can't actually believe it's Thursday already. Another week has gone completely flying by. You know, we are going to be in March very shortly, less than 2 weeks away, probably 10 days away. You're going to be sending your children back to school, which I think most parents are genuinely quite excited about. However, we still do have this kind of hangover about masks, about testing, and about how exactly it's all going to work. We did a survey yesterday based upon the fact that nobody could quite understand how YouGov managed to get the completely wrong way round survey brigade to say that 80-odd% of people in this country would approve of children wearing masks, not just in the school, but in classes and throughout the course of the day for more than 7 hours. Absolutely outrageous. Let's talk to Brendan Chilton, who is CEO of the Independent Business Network, of course. Brendan, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. What are you making of this whole schools conversation? Because clearly it's getting quite a lot of people exercised. I can't quite understand how YouGov have managed to get the mood of the nation quite as wrong as they did, because certainly 55,000 people have voted on our YouTube poll and they're all very much against it.
Well, Mike, I am quite, accepting that they got it wrong. I mean, they got the referendum wrong. They got the last general election wrong. They're being very consistent.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised at all. But to be serious for a moment, I think it is right that children are not being forced to wear these masks. It was an impossible demand to be placed on teachers. Their primary role at the moment is making sure our children and young people catch up with their learning, they're safe in school, and they're actually at a desk getting education funneled into them, not worrying whether or not they've got a mask on or not, particularly in younger years and in kindergarten. I imagine it would be almost impossible to ensure that little children keep masks on. So this is a sensible decision, and I hope most schools will be sensible and pragmatic and will not enforce it.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it, about the efficacy of the advice? Because, of course, those people who are in favour will say things like, well, of course, in France they wear masks, in the UAE they wear masks all day in school. What's the problem? But if you haven't been doing that, then it's a massive problem, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it's part of the big problem of this pandemic has been government communications. If anything comes out of this, it tells us that Number 10 needs an entirely new communication staff because we've had such inconsistent messages throughout this whole pandemic. It's led to people being arrested and punished, businesses being hit, and now this latest debacle on school masks. And while other countries, it's perfectly normal to have face coverings in much of the Muslim world, it's perfectly normal. In East Asia, I've been there, they wear masks all the time. It's not normal here in the UK. We shouldn't be insisting on it. A huge part of human interaction, a huge part of employment, socialising, is the ability to see other people's faces. And so certainly we don't want that imposed here.
No, exactly right. And even a lot of teachers I've spoken to have said they don't want that to be the case because they can't really talk to students, they can't talk to pupils in the same way if you can't see their facial expression.
Quite right. And particularly, I'm a school governor, I have been for about 10 years, and particularly with young children that are just coming into school, particularly from deprived backgrounds, they need to be able to see the teacher's face when they're speaking. A lot of them have got speech and language difficulties and other communication problems. And so the ability to see the face and the expressions of the mouth whilst the teacher is speaking is very important to their communication and development. And I would suggest sticking a mask on them might hinder that somewhat because you can't see what they're doing.
Yes, I mean, I don't think too many people would disagree with you, Brendan. Let's talk a little bit about the budget next week, because Chancellor Rishi Sunak's starting to put out sort of feelers, if you like, as all good chancellors do, about what is likely to be more of a giveaway budget than a takeaway budget. I think that's a good thing, don't you?
I absolutely do. Any tax rises right now or spending cuts would be a disaster. We've got it appears the start of a recovery coming up now, but it's very fragile and could easily be lost. If we start taxing business, stopping them employing new people and expanding their firms, if we don't slash VAT, I mean, people have less spending power, and our organisation, the Independent Business Network, has made a submission to government calling for equally radical measures. We've had the worst recession in 300 years. We need radical measures to meet what we've experienced to boost the economy.
Absolutely right. And as far as the specifics of it, so-called the stamp duty for at least another 3 months, VAT slash for hospitality, 5p fuel duty hike axed, and a bit of sort of reasonably good news for corporation tax, I suppose, as well. Eventually, though, there will be some of these decisions, these hard decisions, will have to be made, won't they?
They will indeed. I would suggest that needs to happen later this year, once we have returned to normal. We cannot continue to borrow more than we are at the minute and continue to spend as if there's an endless money pot. Makes me laugh. I always said Jeremy Corbyn had found the magic money tree. Well, this chancellor's got an entire forest. I mean, he's keeping the whole country subsidised and publicly owned. This can't continue. But right now, I think the priority has got to be to get the economy growing. And around October, November time, once we've returned to normal, once hopefully much commercial activity is resumed as to how it was before, we should then look at measures to paying this off. And I think at that point, some very difficult challenges are going to face the Chancellor, particularly on things such as public sector pay, and particularly on things like foreign aid and other capital programmes. What we really need to do right now is to let the private sector off the leash. We need to encourage businesses to set up. We need to make it easier and quicker to set up a business. We need a more flexible workforce. So things like temporary agency workers need to be looked at to ensure that firms can take on more workers and quickly, because every worker employed is someone paying tax, which means the government can pay off the debt. Every worker employed has got spending power to use in the shops. So we need a massive, massive employment drive.
Exactly right. And what are you finding, Brendan, from your own kind of area down there in Ashford in Kent, as far as businesses are concerned? How have they been coping with all of these restrictions? How have they been able to do business if they have? What's the picture?
Well, just in my own borough, where I am in Ashford in the middle of Kent, throughout the pandemic, 300 home start businesses have launched. Cake baking, food delivery services, cleaning and things like this. So people have been innovative throughout this crisis. But what we need is government not to do its traditional approach and go, a business, let's tax it to the hilt. What we need now is a government that says, right, business, well done to those who survived, well done to the innovators. We're not going to get in your way. Go out there now and grow the British economy. So we need local authorities to be reducing licensing restrictions. We need them to be making sure in their town centres that their high streets are the best places for businesses to be set up. So that means freezing parking charges and things like this to get people back into the high streets. That's what we need to do.
And how about even not just freezing parking charges, but not continuing the massive sort of ramping up of parking paying areas? Because certainly in parts of Sussex, I've seen they've started installing these ridiculous solar-powered parking ticket machines in places where you didn't used to have to pay at all to park, right? Now, I don't know how much these machines cost, but I don't think they're cheap. But what I have seen is an awful lot of people not parking there now because they don't want to pay. Even though it's not that much money, it's the principle. And so therefore, those people are not going to the shops where those parking spots are. They're going elsewhere.
Quite right. Local authorities for far too long have used parking income as a supplementary to their budgets, and they shouldn't be doing it. A parking charge is, in essence, a tariff to access the town centres where you live. And in a world where we want to bring down tariffs, I would suggest local authorities should be reducing their parking income. But especially right now, the biggest issue high street businesses have are business rates and parking charges. The government, it looks as though they're going to freeze business rates for the coming year. They need to look at that in the long term as well as to whether that's the right system. The other angle here is local authorities need to stop being greedy and freeze and reduce, if possible, parking charges to make it easier for people to get into the town centres and to support their local businesses.
Exactly right. And the other thing that I'm told is happening, and I was told this by Mr. Pothole, who's one of our regular contributors, that basically a lot of local councils are now saying, we haven't really got the money to do a lot of the services that we used to do, even though council tax is probably going to be going up. However, we're also not going to be filling in potholes. We're not going to be providing this service, that service and the other service. I mean, I wonder whether somebody needs to get a grip of some of these councils and just say, look, guys, everybody's in the same boat here. You can't just suddenly withdraw services on the grounds that you haven't got enough money if you're collecting more.
Quite right. I mean, I personally think local government across the United Kingdom is a bit of a joke. We've got councils that are elected on tiny turnouts. We've got far too many councils. Why do we need 25,000 councillors in England? We don't. Right. We need to adopt, I'm going to say this as a Eurosceptic, we need a much more continental style of government at the local level. A town mayor and a small council that scrutinises a much bigger area. It would save millions of pounds to the British taxpayer. I think the other point that we need to also acknowledge here is that local government has for some years, I appreciate, taken hits to their income. But a lot of councils up and down the UK have been quite innovative. They've purchased large buildings, rented them out to office blocks and things like this. Of course, that's going to have to change now, but we need local authorities to be more commercial and more entrepreneurial in their approach and look at where they can make savings, particularly on things like parking charges to local residents.
So shouldn't they be looking post-Brexit as well at kind of changing the way that they do business? Because, I mean, we know how many times you drive into some unknown village in the middle of nowhere to find that it's twinned with Auxerre or somewhere like that, because they all love going on these little jollies across to the European Union to hang out and eat some saucisson or something like that. But can we not get them to kind of change their outlook on life rather than trying to twin themselves constantly with places in other parts of the world? They actually concentrate on the businesses of their own communities.
Quite right. I mean, for me, local councils should provide a very important local role to the local community, caring for elderly people in care, organising education locally, and doing the usual things like collecting the bins and all that, which we all depend on.
Yeah.
Councils are there to provide basic services, and they should be looking at high pay. There are extremely well-paid executives in the public sector and in local government. They should be looking at curbing executive pay in those areas. They should also be looking at their assets. Every local authority has got assets spread across their borough, and if they can sell them off, make a bit of money to supplement incomes or reduce council tax, who knows?
Well,
that would be an exciting
Well, I only
thing.
found out the other day, apparently Sadiq Khan's planning on putting London's council tax up 10%. I don't remember him asking anybody about that.
Well, I quite agree. I mean, even though I'm a Labour man, I would not be advocating increasing taxes at this time. And I think he should be listening to the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, who has said we should not be putting up taxes right now. The last thing London needs, or indeed any other part of the country right now, is increasing taxes. If anything, we need to be cutting them to give people more money to spend and to stimulate the economy.
And since you are a Labour man, Brendan, and as I said at the top of the show, one of the few Labour people that I actually get on with, what do you make of poor old Sir Keir Starmer? I mean, I don't imagine his wife even listens to him. I mean, nobody's listening to Keir Starmer anymore, are they?
I think Sir Keir Starmer, to be fair to him, it's been very difficult. He became leader of the Labour Party in the middle of a pandemic. And of course, the right thing to do, I think, is particularly on the public health issues, to be supporting the government. But after the year we've had, the Labour Party right now should be much further ahead than it is in the opinion polls. We should not be in a position where after the worst recession in 300 years, we are still 2 to 3 points behind the Conservative Party. Far, far bigger improvement than the mess we had under Jeremy Corbyn. We're on the right track, but we've got to pick up the pace now because the election will come sooner than we think. And if Labour is to stand a chance of denting that majority or even securing its own majority, we've got to up our game.
No, absolutely right. And what about Brexit? Because that's kind of disappeared off the front pages for the moment. Obviously, the Northern Ireland story still bumbles around and bubbles under. I speak to Kate Hoey every now and again, and she keeps saying, look, all the government has to do is sort this out, and they can sort it out. What do you make of the Northern Ireland protocol situation?
Well, I think Kate Hoey is doing a fantastic job, and other individuals such as Ben Habib, who I understand has launched a legal case against the government on this. It's an absolute disgrace that part of the United Kingdom has essentially been siphoned off to the Republic and to the European Union. How can it be that British firms in Great Britain cannot freely trade with other British firms in Northern Ireland? How could it be that flowers and shellfish and wood and anything from Great Britain can't go to another part of our country, Northern Ireland? It needs to be organised and sorted out now, because the risk, if it isn't sorted out, is that the orientation of Northern Ireland will look south to Dublin and look to the European Union, and we could see, in the not too distant future, a border poll where if the British government has abandoned the province, which it has at the moment, they might say, well, if you've abandoned us, we don't want to be with you anymore. So Boris Johnson, get your act together and bring Northern Ireland back into the Union. I mean,
fortunately for Boris, I suppose, the government of the Republic seems to be upsetting its citizens even more than ours are being upset by our government, because they're putting in one of the longest lockdowns in the history of the world. An awful lot of people in Dublin that I've spoken to recently are saying this is ridiculous, absolutely nonsensical.
Well, it is. And Ireland's economy, of course, is much smaller than the United Kingdom. You might guess from my name, Brendan, it's not an Anglo-Saxon name. There is Irish heritage there. Yeah. So I obviously want Ireland to do well. But I think Ireland needs to realise that it is very much dependent on trade with the United Kingdom. It's been quite interesting how various Taoiseachs over the past few years have been very much batting for the European Union in creating obstacles for a good positive deal between the EU and the UK, much to their own detriment. And no amount of EU state fund, well, there's no EU funding, they've got no money of their own, no amount of money from the collected funds of the European Union will supplement any loss in trade between the Republic and Great Britain.
Absolutely right. I see, by the way, that Build today has got a front page in which they're praising Britain's rollout of the vaccine because they're still pretty upset about the way that the EU has handled their vaccine rollout. And even Angela Merkel is getting it. They're saying that they've used the word, I don't know if you've got any German in you, but they're using the word Benelden, which apparently means envy in Germany, because they're now braced for a virus third wave because only 4% of the public have been vaccinated.
Well, it is amazing, isn't it? We were told by many of the Remainers in this country that if we didn't opt into the EU vaccination programme, we'd all be dead by now.
Right.
And we'd all be doomed. Well, actually, quite the opposite has happened. We've excelled in this. I think we're just behind Israel in the international league table. It goes up and down slightly every day, but we're much further ahead than the EU. And to see this headline from the leading German newspaper is a right smack in the face for Angela Merkel and the Eurocrats. And I think the European Union is going to have to seriously look at itself. If it wants to survive, it cannot continue to impose these top-down, centralised measures on such a diverse population and such a diverse set of nation states. There's got to be reform if it survives. If not, Germany, come and join us on the outside. It's great.
Absolutely right. I mean, heaven forfend, but we could even, Brendan, suggest that we start up a trading organisation with other European countries, just like the EU used to be.
Well, who would have thought, eh? Who would have thought? I mean, we could do. I mean, they could come and join our customs union if they like.
Yeah.
And we could give them our vaccines. But I personally think we should be giving our surplus vaccines to the developing world. And when I say the developing world, I mean the Commonwealth. Those countries who we shamefully left behind when we went into the EU. If we do have surpluses, I would far see us helping those in the Commonwealth that have, despite being a member of the EU, remain fairly loyal to us, and we should help them out.
Absolutely right. Brendan, delight to speak to you as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Brendan Chilton, CEO of the Independent Business Network, a man who speaks an awful lot of common sense. As I said, he's a guy who knows about business. He knows about small business. He knows about tax. He knows about how companies should be treated. He knows how independent councils should be running. And he knows about how outside of the European Union, Britain will be prospering. They just need to sort out the Northern Ireland situation because that, I have to say, is the only real fly in the ointment about leaving the European Union. If you live in Northern Ireland, you know, you want to get this sorted out sooner rather than later.